Welcome again to our special session with our guest speaker, Deborah Burns. And just to give you a little bit of information about it, Deborah is an author. She's a speaker. She has done so much in her short span of time with us on this earth, and you can benefit from listening to her, which is awesome. She has always been about invention and reinvention. Right? Those are two keywords she has used all throughout her career. She is primarily a women's media chief innovation officer. She talks to everybody, all right? She's a leader of brands like Elle, Décor, Metropolitan home and industry consultant throughout the creative pivot. Pivot, does that sound like some of us, right? Okay, we're constantly reinventing ourselves and our skills. And that's exactly what Deborah did as well, giving her more opportunities. The experience of being an author really kind of let her light bulb go off, illuminated the path to her second book, Authorize It. Think like a writer to win at work and life. And she's going to share some of those secrets with us. I'm a better auditory listener and learner as opposed to a reader. So I'm going to get some tips as well. Over to you, Deborah.
Well, thank you. Thank you all for joining. And it feels to me from talking to Christine in advance that we're a group of seekers, whether we have a job or are searching for a job or searching for something more. Hopefully the message and the method that I'm going to share with you today will spark you on your own career journeys. So we're going to talk about personal narratives, finding, owning, and telling or sharing your story for success, because we know, especially at work, whoever tells the best story wins. So I'm going to share a little bit of my own. Thank you, Christine, for that introduction. And let's see if we can go to slide 2 here. And I have been on my own creative journey. I went from that media world that Christine explained with magazines, for those of you who remember them. But that world is still being reinvented because magazines met their digital future and didn't quite know what to say or do next. And the business model was completely different. And so I lived through an industry kind of de-evolution and reinvention that in a way led to my own. And while I was reinventing myself as the world was imploding around me, I was compelled to write a story. And it's the build up to that light bulb moment is too long for this conversation, but I was compelled to write a story about my relationship with my very unconventional mother. And that became, after a 7-year creative journey, a parallel path with my day job, that became Saturday's Child. And the process of immersing myself into the world of storytelling to learn how to take whatever writing talent I had and make it come out in a new way, because I was a journalism major in school, in college, and I was in marketing and sales on these magazines. So I was wired for the headline, the summary, the quick take that would compel someone else to come along with me. But writing a story that had to unfold for readers and allow readers space to come into the story and understand was a whole different skill set. And with the discovery process for making those skills my own, I realized that there's so much wisdom in the world of story structure and storytelling that every great writer knows, but 98% of us who are never going to write a book don't. That there were these abstract concepts that could be made accessible for people so they could better shape the stories that they need to tell for success. And that light bulb moment led to a new mission for me, where I am now with this new book, all about helping others to shift perspective and live up to their career potential. It's very simple. It allows room and space for a lot of things to happen in the work world in my life that fall under that umbrella, but that is what I do. Shift perspective and help people live up to their career potential. I hope to do a little bit of that for you today and kind of distill everything that's in a book into a 90-minute conversation together. What I learned about the power of storytelling is that there are 5 lessons we all need to know. The first one is embrace the narrative arc. There are components or elements of every single story, and there are cycles in that story. Although the plots are different between each one, the characters are different between each one, the way the story is told, the cycles are always, always, always the same. And that applies to your work life. It applies to any project that you're working on. There are always going to be 4 cycles. And everything about it is going to fall into those 4 cycles. And if you understand what they are, you're going to be better prepared. You're going to be less likely to be afraid or be hesitant or think you're doing something wrong. So understanding them is very important to your success. And the 4 cycles are: shift. Something changes. We've all lived through the past year, so I don't need to say too much about this first cycle, since every business and every business conversation and every person is changing. Something shifted our landscape. The second cycle is instability. When you're in new territory and you don't know all the rules and you're not sure about what's going on, there is always, always instability. The third cycle is darkness. Oh my goodness, it gets worse. Always, always, whether you're in the messy middle of a project at work and everything that you do creates 5 new problems, it always, always gets worse as the complexity increases.
You know, it's funny that you say that, Deborah, because I have a quote on my wall and I look at it and I'm like, what does that really mean? It says, today is bad, tomorrow is worse, but the next day the sun comes out and it's a little bit brighter. and that's perfect summary of it's going to get worse and then it will get better.
It always gets better. And what happens in a story is that the 4th cycle is lightness. there will always be an evolution or a transformation of some sort. Even if the project didn't work out, there's learning from it that will take you or the company to a higher level. Another quote, Christine, I just heard from a very successful entrepreneur is that every night at dinner, her father's question to his 4 children was, "What did you fail at today?"
Love that.
Because his belief is if you didn't fail at something, you're not trying. And maybe that should be, I see all your quotes behind you. That's a good one to hang up there too.
Yes.
So there will always be in this 4th cycle some sort of elevation. Within those 4 cycles of shift, instability, lightness, and darkness and light, excuse me, there are 4 ingredients. Action. The story that's not moving forward is not a story. Reaction. One thing that's really important for us to know is that your reaction to the events of your life, particularly at work, is a huge determinant of your success. Response to the action. The 3rd is expectations, what you expect to happen and how you structure that and how you approach that in your life. And the 4th, and most important, but what most people have the greatest amount of trouble with, is your quest. What is it that you want? Those 4 ingredients within those 4 cycles propel every story forward, every company forward, every project forward. So it's important to understand them. The 2nd lesson is understand your characters. Every author does very well, and you do too. Because although you are the hero or heroine of your own story, at work, you are a supporting character. Everybody who's around you is the hero or heroine of their own personal story, and you're all there as supporting characters to one another and to the company that you serve. And if you're in your own venture, you're a supporting character to your clients, to your partners, to your investors, whoever you're talking to. It's a nuance, but understanding those people around you is another critical component of success. Their perspective and your understanding of that will help you deepen relationships and move your story forward in the way that you want. Knowledge is always power. And within lesson 2, understand your characters. The character you most need to understand is yourself. When you see your shadow on the sidewalk on a sunny day like today, it is caused by the obstacle that is you. There is so much self-sabotage that goes on, and we are so often in our own way at work. This is going to require more self-inquiry on your part. This is something that we can't tackle in a workshop completely like this, but knowing that integrating your shadow sides, those traits that you try to hide about yourself, are really in many ways what connects you to other people. The vulnerabilities that you have are what make you relatable with discretion. You're always in charge of what you're sharing. Never be an oversharer, because at work, doing so can be detrimental. But you need to understand who you are, what you want, what your patterns are, what you might like to change about the story that you're telling. So this whole lesson 2 is about understanding others and understanding yourself. Lesson 3 is welcome conflict. A story without conflict, a story without obstacles in the way of the quest, of that hero or heroine's quest, is boring, is not a story. It would never be published. There always has to be conflict that needs to be faced, mediated, and resolved. If that overcoming is not part of the process, you will not have a good career story. So where many of us avoid conflict, sidestep it at every turn, operate sort of in neutral or fly under the radar so that you're not exposed, are actually hurting their career story. And lesson 4 and 5 are interrelated. One is seek the unconventional, because when there's a shift, especially like one we just had, what is historically significant no longer is. That you need to look for solutions, particularly at work, in new territory, turn over new rocks. You cannot be successful by living in the tried and true. And most people live there because it's much more comfortable to live there.
I was gonna say that it's so comfortable there, though. Sun's always
Super
shining.
comfortable. And
Why
we're
would you
not
step
going
out
to,
of
you know,
that?
we're not going to not call out the elephant in the room. It's so much easier.
Yes, it is.
Just, you know, not change, do
Nothing.
whatever you did before. But I'm here to tell you that, especially because we are at an unprecedented inflection point with technology that is accelerating so rapidly in unanticipated ways, what you did before is no longer going to work. You need the perspective and the learning of what came before, but you need to make it come to life in new ways today. So developing a mindset where you become a seeker of the unusual or the unconventional or the new is critically important. And related to that is lesson number 5, step into the unknown. Again, touchy subject because of comfort zones. But if opportunity, especially career opportunity, is in the white space between things, unless you do something new and take a step into the foggy unknown, you won't find it. And especially for those of you who are transitioning, who might have been impacted by the pandemic, your job changed, or you still have that job, but your heart is telling you, I want to do something new. Stepping into the unknown, as I did when I wrote the book, I'm right there with you. I understand how comfortable it is, but I also understand the power of the unknown and how it can impact your life in ways that you don't even anticipate. But in order to benefit from it, you have to take step 1. Now, because when I do workshops, we have a little bit of the overarching theory, but I want to be sure that you have actionable takeaways from today that you can apply to your life. And the storytelling tools that I'm going to talk about are mindset, finding your backstory, creating your defining line, using a tool called Read, that I call Read.
Is it like read books or
No,
read articles?
It's an acronym for the four steps that you need to take to shape your story for success. And then at the very end, once you're in the job that you want to be in, I have some quick information for you so that you can tell the best business story that you need to tell. Because once you're in that job, I want you to be as successful as you can be. So the first mindset shift here is going back to that hero or heroine mentality. As a storyteller and as someone who immersed myself in the world of storytelling, there are some characteristics that every successful hero or heroine has in order to get to at the end of that story where they evolve in a positive way. So that I don't have to keep saying hero or heroine. I call it the H, and you'll know what I mean. So the H mindset can be described across three different buckets. They have perspective, they are open to others, to ideas, they operate from a place of sincerity and empathy. So kind of open to the world, even in a story, and you can probably identify some of your favorites where the H does not start out with any of those characteristics. They can be cranky, they could be stuck in a rut. There's all kinds of different characters in those stories. But in order to be a successful H, they end that story with a certain openness that they get in touch with, and an authenticity or sincerity and empathy for others that they may not have seen or even recognized about themselves at the beginning of the story. And the second bucket for the H mindset is that they're inquisitive. They are curious, lifelong learners. They understand that they're on a journey and that they are always evolving. Because like that narrative arc that we talked about in lesson 1, within lesson 2, there is a character arc. Every story has both. So everything that you go through in your project story at work is evolving you into your best self, all of your experiences. And that's just something very important to keep in mind. As you understand the characters around you, even the antagonists, those people who seem to be out to get you, are always teaching you something about yourself that you wouldn't have known otherwise. And it is rising above those conflicts and challenges that makes you better and evolves you. And that's something, a lot of us know that. To some of us, it may be second nature. But in the work that I do with people and teams, I believe that we all need that refresher, that we are all evolving into our best selves. And the third bucket is a striving for excellence. Because if you strive for excellence in everything that you do, it doesn't mean you're going to be successful every time, but when you fail, you're going to be failing forward. So H's have standards, they act as if, and they are always growing and improving their skill sets and their talents. So if you do these things within these three buckets, and you don't have to announce it to anybody at work, but if you just start adopting these characteristics, you will see over a very short period of time that as you change your approach and you do things a little differently, what's around you is also going to change. Now we are going to talk about finding your story. And I'm going to give you some writer's prompts. Whoops, sorry about that. I'm going to give you some writer's prompts. And we're going to think about things that happened in your life. Now, we can't do this live with everyone that's on the call. So as Christine said at the beginning, you don't have to write everything I say down frantically, because for those in attendance, there is a PDF where what I'm saying to you now will be actually in front of you. These are exercises that are meant for you to do at home so that you can incorporate your backstory into how you're shaping your story at work, your personal narrative. So
if you'd like to share it with everyone else, we would love to hear what your story is, because it might give us some ideas about, oh, wait, that's a lot like mine, or maybe the beginning is like mine, but it ended differently, or the arc is different, or the characters are a little bit different. Put it in the chat box. I'd love to hear from you, and I will share it with Deborah.
That's wonderful. And, you know, I told you a little bit just to give you a head start or an example at the outset. My business world was imploding. I felt compelled to write a story about my mother. There was a lot of instability because I didn't know how to do that. I had a lot of misfires, twists and turns, pivots, successes and failures, peaks and valleys, whatever phrase you want to use in that instability period. I had a darkness period where I realized after being 3/4 of the way through that the story wasn't working. And I realized it wasn't working because I was trying to tell my mother's story without me in it. And recognizing that it wasn't my love letter to my mother, but it was the true story of my perspective on our relationship that changed everything. And it made the book the award winner. But in that darkness phase, that meant that I had to start over, which was not, I promise you, easy. And the lightness came when the book published, and all of my fears and terrors about putting myself out into the world and being judged in a whole new way really didn't manifest. And instead, what ended up happening is that it's a story about mothers and daughters that is meaningful to a lot of people. So that's my example of what I'm going to bring to life for you now, because we all have a pivotal moment in our lives that transformed us in some way. And that's what I'm going to ask you to recall. So you see here in the diagram, those 4 cycles: shift, instability, darkness, and light. And the word incident or situation or experience that's in the middle. So from lesson 1, the narrative arc lesson, I'm going to ask you to recall a situation like my own that happened to you. And here's how we're going to pull that together. I'm going to read to you from here so that you have it. In the same way, writers continually probe about the story that they are telling. Consider your story's themes. As your first "What's my story?" Prompt, make a large diagram just like this, divided into 4 parts for each of the stages of the narrative arc. Then recall one situation from your past where you lived through the 4 cycles and write down what happened in each one. If you have more than one incident, make another chart, but you have to have at least one to go on, okay? In lesson 2, what you need to do is add the emotion that you felt in each one of the cycles. So in the first, you're putting down what happened. And now in the second one, you're revisiting that same chart. Put a line extending out from each of the 4 parts and write down the emotion you felt. Then ask yourself, did my feelings change from start to finish? Was I stronger at the end than I was at the beginning? Then extend 2 more lines from each cycle and write down how that emotion made you act and react. Did your actions and reactions reveal anything that could impact your story going forward? Did you overreact? You know, there are some common questions that flow when you're doing this kind of self-inquiry. Did you overreact? Did you underreact? Did your emotions teach you something that could positively impact your story going forward? And then
I think when you look at it like this and you actually spell it out, you will maybe even realize that what you think is where you need to pivot or what you really want to do might not have that commonality in those 4 boxes or those lessons that you had stated. And maybe you need to be somewhere else because of that common thread throughout all the pivoting that you've done. I love that.
You're going to discover things about yourself.
Yeah.
And one of the things that people do discover that I feel is most important is that you look at a situation as a negative in your life.
Mm-hmm.
We all have wounds. We're all flawed. My wound was that my mother might have been a tad narcissistic. She was otherworldly beautiful. I was her only child. I danced around her pedestal my whole life. And she was always very elusive for me. I never felt fully loved or as if I was her priority. That's why the book is named Saturday's Child. I saw her mostly on Saturdays, and it was like a theme of our life. It's a wound that was secreted and tamped down within me, but actually, not only did it make me resilient, it gave me qualities that made me a success at the office. It made me intuitive because I was always trying to figure her out. And what is going on here? Is it me? Is it her? It made me inventive because I always had to win her. And if I wasn't engaging, maybe she wouldn't see me next Saturday. So I was always in there and thinking, and it made me a successful teammate at work because I am wired to help someone else shine. I don't have to be number one. I'm very comfortable being a second.
I think that you are right, Deborah, because all of these things, when you start to analyze from your childhood to current and the pivots that you might have encountered and the shifts and the changes that you've had to endure all this time to find out, what do you want to be when you grow up, or tell me about yourself. As job seekers, these are the foundations that build upon what we are and why we are who we are, even if we all have the same background or same similar experiences. We're all different because different people have impacted us. I love that analogy.
Well, thank you. Thanks for getting it. And this is an extraordinarily helpful exercise. There are many others that are in the book that add dimension to all of this, but we can't. This is a lot of information already, so we can't go into every single one. But so many of the stories that we carry in a burdensome way and affect us still today do come from our childhood, whether it's parental, whether it's siblings, whether it's something terrible that happened to us. But I'm here to say that those stories are there for a reason. Add to the fabric of who you are and what you can offer. As Oprah Winfrey said about her own mother, which was a very difficult relationship, and I actually say in the pages of my first book, she may not have been the mother I thought I needed, but she was the mother I needed to be me. And there is a powerful realization in that. Certainly it's not good to not feel as if you're a priority or fully loved. I'm going to leave the negatives to the experts. That's not my domain. My domain is living the positives, finding them, and helping you use that to become all that you can be today. So the third prompt here is the lesson 3's welcome conflict. I want you to add another line to each one of these 4 boxes, and I want you to say the obstacle that you faced in each cycle that you were able to overcome. And when you look at your finished chart, I want you to really think about the changes, the learnings, the surprises that are woven into your story, and just write them all down. You don't need to be a writer to do any of this. No one's going to read this. This is not for publication. You don't need to be a writer, but this is teaching you to think like a writer who's creating characters for a powerful story. And when you think like a writer, you're going to get to a result that you want to achieve. So that's your backstory portion. We're going to round it out with lesson 4 and lesson 5. You don't need to do this part with those 4 cycles, but I want you to add to all that you're jotting down one moment in your life where you did something that was completely out of character for you. Something totally unconventional.
Just one?
Just one. Yeah, you don't need to do this one.
I don't know.
One totally unconventional thing that you did in your life, and just write down what it was. If you want to write down a little scene about what it was, like what happened, a paragraph, do so. But we've all done something totally out of character. Write it down. And the 5th, that step into the unknown lesson, I want you to think about a serendipitous moment in your life. You know, one of those moments where you say, can you believe that happened? Some coincidental, out of the blue positive surprise that you did not anticipate. And for both of these, I again want you to note what were the changes, like what were you doing before that unconventional moment or that serendipitous moment? Can you do more of that to make more of them happen in the future? What were your learnings from that unconventional moment? Did you fall flat on your face, or did something else happen? Be mindful of that, and also the surprises that come with it. And continuing with your backstory, we are going to add 3 buckets to what you're discovering about your incident and your story, and what that taught you about yourself, about how you handle your emotions and conflict, and how you got stronger. I'm going to ask you to make a list of your attributes, strengths and positives that you want to define you. You could make 2 columns if you want to. Strengths and positives that I have right now, strengths and positives that I'd like to have. So it can be real, it can be aspirational, but I want you to write down those attributes. One way to help you identify the first one, because a lot of people have a hard time talking about themselves, or, you know, they still feel, even if they're just doing it by themselves, oh, I shouldn't be talking about my strengths and positives. I'll ask Christine the question. Christine, when people turn to you, what do they turn to you for most often? What do they ask you for? It could be in your personal life. It could be in your just your work life. I mean,
I need a job.
No.
That's what they say.
What? No, deeper than that. What
you asked.
They turn to you for? I can tell you mine. Yes, people turn to me. I want a job.
Yes.
Every single one of my children's friends, I've helped their careers and touched their careers in some way. I just want
them to be specific on how I can help them, because
So
there's so many ways. Do I connect you? Do I?
But I'm even going deeper than that. Yeah. Like, I'm looking for one word. When people, if I step back from this strength, what people turn to me for is counsel, advice and counsel, guidance.
So there you go, thesaurus right there. Help, counsel, advice.
Right. So
think about, right?
Think about what attribute do you have that makes people come to you? Are you helpful? Are you, that in that question, you can find some of your answers. You can also think about it as, what strengths and positives do I have no matter where I am? What do I bring to the table? No matter, am I open? Like, do I have some of the H traits? Am I open, positivity? Those are your personal attributes that come with you. The second bucket are your values. What are your core beliefs? I'm going to see if I can quickly, because people do have problems narrowing it down. So core values would be commitment, courage, compassion, faith. Those would fall into that value bucket. And then the third is, and if you don't have a fully formed quest, what is it your vision? Where do you think you want to go?
That's I thought about this yesterday, just not even on the topic of what you're speaking about, but I was looking for values and describing words, adjectives to describe a friend whose birthday is coming up. And when I looked at this list, there were obvious, well, yeah, duh, of course she's that. But then there were other values and adjectives and adverbs in there that totally did not describe this person. So I think that's a good starting point, because some had, an ing, some had, different endings, but they were kind of the same word. But yet I could not say that this person was necessarily loving or faithful, but yet they're persistent. And so you're going to get some of those describing words just by looking at a list of describing words, and you can jump off from that point.
Yeah, actually, if you're struggling, look at a list and pick out the ones that define you. There's something.
Yes.
There are many types of tests online.
Yes.
There's, Christine, you probably know the name of it. It's like it's a character survey, and you take it, and all these attributes come at you. A lot of.
And if you want descriptions, you take that and just, what does it mean? What's a dictionary definition of that word? And you could get even more words that mean kind of the same thing, that, hey, that's not really me, but this is totally me.
Yeah, for sure. And then as part of the vision, it's the quest, where you think you want to go. And just in an ideal world, I'm not saying that your job does this right now, who would you want to benefit from your work? Who would you like to serve? That's always a filter question that helps you get at where you want to go.
And that is a new interview question too, Deborah.
Yeah,
I just
for sure.
Absolutely.
For sure. And then all of this work comes together to create a defining line for you. It's like a log line for a book, or a tagline for a brand. And it helps you answer that dreaded interview question. Tell me about yourself.
Yes.
Because it's just an overarching frame that you don't have to reveal everything. In fact, you shouldn't, because then it gets too wordy. But it's kind of like at the beginning of this presentation, before you really knew anything about what this was, I said I have a mission to shift perspective and help everyone live up to their career potential. So you may not know exactly what I do, but if someone said to me, tell me about yourself, I'd say, well, I have books and workshops that help people shift perspective and live up to their career potential.
You don't sell fish?
No, I don't fish.
Fish.
So it's a frame, and I look through that frame to decide what's next. Oh, do I want to expand my corporate workshops to colleges? Sure, because graduating seniors, why just help people when they're in their careers? Why not help people before they step into their careers? So does it serve that mission? Absolutely. Should I do it? Yes. So it's a filter from me, and it helps others to immediately get who the person across the table, across the Zoom call, what the expertise is. Because if I can shift someone's perspective and help them live up to their potential, I must have a knowledge base. I must know something to be able to do that. So it's giving someone something compelling and intriguing, and I don't need to reveal anymore. That's where I'd like you all to get, is to now look at your answers to your backstory for those 5 lessons, that incident in your life. You only need one of them to begin to shape how something pivotal made you who you are today. And then your positives, your strengths, your attributes, your values, and the audience that you want to serve. And then you can put it together into this play that you're going to do with words, because it's not an overnight thing. I can say this now, but that doesn't mean it hit me like that, which is why you have a PDF workbook, why no one on this call should be saying, oh my God, I can't do that. This is work that you need to sit with and discover in privacy on your own time. But if you play with your answers to this, you are going to get to a line. And for brave souls at the end, if you want to talk about a specific situation in your life, or you want help and guidance to get there, we might be able to have time at the end to do that. So
any questions in the chat box? No questions. I haven't seen anything come up, feedback or yeah, this doesn't work for me, anything.
Well, I'm going to assume that means it's working for everybody. Everybody's percolating.
There you go. There you go. I know there's a lot of information that Deborah's giving you to think about, and a lot of actions.
A lot of actions. Yes. So we're going to do a few more. And we're going to keep pausing, so there'll be moments where we can chat together. Now we're going to do read. Once you have this narrative about who you are and what that defining line is, and you're at work or you're seeking work, tying your personal narrative to the business story you're telling, or to the company that you want to work for, or to the recruiter that you're talking to, you do 4 things. There are 4 parts to that. And read takes you through that. So that's why there's an acronym. It is a simple template. I'm going to find it here so that I can get there with you and stare at the same thing that you're staring at. So you always, when you're in a situation, you always have to relate to the problem that you're both facing in some way. So relate to the shift that's happened. You know, if I'm talking to that college that I mentioned, in this shift, colleges, the ROI is changing. College has to demonstrate their worth in a way that they never had before, because the real question is, after all this money, can I get a job? Is that what you're going to, you know? And so they have to demonstrate their worth, and they know that. So when I started talking to colleges, I would reference that as I work with corporations and onboarding new employees, and I see the challenges those corporations have with the perspective of those new employees. You know, that's why I'm talking to you today, because you must feel that too. And now more than ever, readying students for day one on the job is critically important. So now, I'm not saying anything good, I'm not saying anything bad, I'm just saying I understand the situation that we're both in. The E in read stands for ease. Now you're going to introduce something that eases the shift that you just mentioned. So it references now this instability, but you're going to ease it with like the start of an idea. So if I stay with my own example, so what I did is I took my corporate workshop for teams and I built a whole new module for students so that they're fully ready. Now I've identified and related. Now they might be worried, oh, are we really living up to our ROI? Do we really do this? Now I've eased it. I have something. In the next The A in read is apply. Now I'm going to apply it in a concrete way. Because just like an unfolding story, you never want to have too much information up front. Talk up front. You're going to lose the person. So it's an unfolding. So I say, so when I built this module, I piloted it at 3 colleges, and the results have been so impactful that we're doing more and whatever quote I want to pull out about the success story. So now I've actually applied it and I made it really real. And then the 4th is D, deliver a happy ending. Whenever you're in conversation with someone, you have to end in a way where they feel that they will be better off with you than without you. Remember, all the way back at the beginning, you're a supporting character. It's not about you, it's about them. And you have to give them a feeling that they're going to be better off if they have you. It's a nuance, it's critically important. Every story has it, even the ones that don't end well. And so that construct for any meeting that you're having, you should be able in advance to do the advance work, to understand who you're talking to, and fill out like a faux conversation. Just write it out in the relate box, in the ease box, in the apply, and in the deliver. And then really go over it, perfect it, so that when you're in conversation with someone, you can pull out the right threads. If you don't do the advanced work, you're not going to be ready. And some of you may be saying, oh, she's just talking extemporaneously, and somehow the threads are connected. That's because of a year's worth of advanced work, so that Christine can ask me a question, or any of you can ask me a question, and I can be in the moment with you. And because I've now wired myself to think this way, the threads that then apply can come out in a way that will benefit you, because it's not about me, it's about you.
What's in it for me? The listener, not you, really.
That's right.
The
And
listener.
it may
Let's
sound
deliver,
crude.
but we've talked about all of these things, and Deborah has renamed them and kind of explained it in a different way, from the STAR method to the end, the READ method. And she's giving you different definitions and tidbits to put it all together for you, so you can put it into action and go forward.
So we're at the end of finding, owning, and sharing or telling your personal story. We can pause here. Christine, totally up to you.
Any questions, guys? Struggles? I got nothing so far.
Okay.
I am trying to process all this information. I'm like, yeah, I know it's a lot. It's a lot.
Well,
This PDF I'm going to send you guys, I mean, it's huge and there's a lot of information. So that's very helpful and goes along with what we just talked about. So when you are receiving it, filling it out, it's going to definitely make sense. Anyone that was not on the call, they're not going to get it. They're not going to understand what to do with it. So I'm not even sending it to them. But this is going to be very helpful for you to outline the answers that you're looking for.
Right. And Christine, when we get to the end of this and you get feedback, if the group of people that come to you and come to these workshops that you offer wants to deep dive in a particular area,
Mhm.
Think of this as the headlines or the chapters.
There you go.
If you want to deep dive into the story prompts and really have a session where the people are actually going to share the incident of their lives, or want to get to the defining line as a group and have people weigh in, I mean, that's an option that could be scheduled.
Thank you.
But I do recognize that this is a lot of information, but there is more depth and contexture, so that you can contextualize. So there's context in this PDF that Christine is going to send. And of course, there's more that you can find online about each one of these areas. So we'll move on to Business 101. This is designed to make you a success once you're in the job that you want. And we ended the other with read. So whenever you have a client meeting, now you're in this job, whenever you have a client meeting, whenever you're talking to a boss, whenever you're addressing a partner that you want to work with, always have a read template in mind for everything that you're discussing. And it filters into what I call story intelligence. There are 4 parts to story intelligence, just like any book, any movie you've been binge watching during the pandemic. The 4 components to make it really come to life for someone else is create a package. Everything needs to be packaged. In your next PowerPoint presentation, are you droning on with slides of data, or like a book? Do you have like an inciting incident? Are you telling a story from that data? Does it look right? Are the fonts, if it's a PowerPoint presentation, are you putting a visual with it that makes it look good? On the opening slide here, Authorize It has a brand identity. It's real. It has a logo. And of course, companies that you work for have these materials, but you need to use them. And then as you work on individual projects or new products, you need to package up the information that you're sharing in a way that makes it easy for someone else to get it, decide. That's your goal. Make it easy for someone else. And to do that, you need to create a package, just like a book has a cover and a beautiful front and back and all of it. You have to think like that. You have to build in emotion. Slides of data don't do that, but a story that illuminates the data does. I just watched a movie called The Social Dilemma on Netflix. One of the scariest things I ever saw about all the unintended consequences of social media and technology. And they build in emotion right away. And one of the ways that they do it is quotes. Another way is testimonials, of course. Those are little mini capsule stories. But I wrote here that it opens with a thought-provoking quote from Sophocles that says, "Nothing vast enters the life of mortals without a curse." So before you even start watching, it's got your attention, and there is something that you need to discover by watching this, because it's going to have a big impact on you. just from a few words put together as a quote. That's what I mean about building in emotion. You have to make people relate to what it is that you're saying or want them to do. If you want to get to yes, you have to create a package, build in emotion, and know the storylines. You have to do your advanced work, the about page, whether you're talking to a prospect, an existing client, you have to find out everything that you can find out about them. And luckily, it's never been easier. It's all out there. And then the fourth part of story intelligence is keep up the pacing. Every conversation has a rhythm to it, just like every book is paced a certain way. And you need to make statements, you need to listen, you need to be in the moment of that conversation, because you're always going to hear something back that's going to help you get to where you want to go. Storytellers are really, first and foremost, story askers. And when you think about dialogue in a book, dialogue doesn't have a lot of closed-ended questions unless the author is trying to show that a character is non-communicative or just gives yes or no answers. So if I ask Christine, did you have a good weekend? I'm giving her an opportunity to say yes, no. But if I say to her in an open-ended way, tell me about your weekend. Tell me about the best part of your weekend. I am always going to find out something that I didn't know. And that's the goal in business. In any type of conversation, whether you're trying to understand the characters around you, whether you're prospecting for new business, always asking open-ended questions is going to get you further faster. So the tell me about your perspective on, you're going to find out more than you thought. The how, you can say, how do you can fill in the blank, define the problem. How do you see this working? How do you see the best next step? Whenever you ask questions in that way, the other person's always going to give you more that you can then use.
Which is why they're asking you in those words, because they want to know more than those yes or no answers.
Yes, for sure. The E, you know, I big on acronyms to make it easy for people. So I call this the way, and the E is either educate me on or enlighten me on, seek information. You never want to over question, because then you're annoying, just like everything else. There is, you need to know when enough is enough. And if you're always asking questions where you should know the answers, that's not a good thing. But there's always something that you'd love to know more about. And so, you know, being educated on a particular topic, even if you're talking to someone about fishing, to your point, Christine, you know, like what's great about it? Like you're gathering information. The W is what, which is as powerful a question as tell me about. So what could be, what do you need? What does success look like? What are your concerns? What am I missing? Is a huge important question, because there's always more to the story and there's always something you don't know. The A is, and what else? Like, never get to the end of a conversation without saying, you know, anything else and what else? Because there always could be like one little tidbit, and what would improve the result. And the Y is to have this kind of yes and mindset when you're in conversation with someone. So yes, when somebody else says something, and build on what that other person's saying rather than no, but. Yes, and is always more positive. In business conversations, you probe with these open-ended questions. You Elle, as you plot the Elle is live in the moment of that conversation, because when you're prepared, you can do that. You can pull out the right threads at the right time in response to what someone else is saying. And the O is because you're probing, because you're living in the moment, there will always be opportunistic plot lines that appear from the challenges that you're hearing. Always. Without fail. And then the T is it's your job to kind of twist those problems into forward-looking actions. So if someone tells you, oh, I don't have a budget for this, and you've been in the moment of the conversation with them, and they told you about a new product that they would like to launch, you say, well, if we could find a way to gather some research about that particular product, that when you did have a budget to launch, it would be helpful to you, would that work? You know, there's always something that you can pull, twist, because a story without a plot twist is no fun. So, you know, you have to think like a writer. When someone tells you their challenge, they're giving you an opportunistic moment to find something that you can do that's going to alleviate the challenge. So thinking this way will help you in that job that you have. If you seek and you find, now you'll be more successful. And the final thing, which is a nuance but very important, most of you will not be responsible for the company story that you work for. Somebody in communications is doing that and building that with the mission and all of that for the company. But you will be responsible for explaining your company to someone else. And you will be responsible for defining your company and understanding your company and what drives them. And I am just going to minimize this for a minute. So here's how to do that in the best possible way. Every company's H, hero or heroine, is the customer or the character that they serve. It's not the company, even if they write their mission that way. The character that they serve is the H of their story, the hero or heroine. You need to figure out, explain who that customer is, the character that your company serves. You need to be able to describe their problem, because every company is solved, no matter what they do, is solving a problem and fulfilling on a customer need. You have to be able to explain the character you serve, the E, describe their problem, illuminate, the I in edit, the solution you provide. You have to be able to very simply explain through the product or service that your company provides how it solves the character's problem. And then you have to be able, just like the D in read, to tell how it makes your character better. If you could do those 4 things for your company, you will be able to talk to prospects, clients, customers in ways that will allow you to tie their story to your company's story and to succeed. Because when you own your story, you'll be one of those people who tells the best story. And as I said at the beginning, whoever tells the best story wins. So now, Christine, we can talk, we can have some hand raisers, we can pose questions to the crowd that we have, or we can give everybody time to digest. You can send out their PDF and they can start working on their homework to get to their defining lines.
Let's start with any questions. I'd like to send out the PDF at the same time as the URL and all that good stuff this afternoon when Zoom gets around to giving me that information so I can upload it. Do we have any questions? Well, we have our expert Deborah on the call, and pick her brain. She's here, and it's free, so go for it,
yeah,
guys.
and if there's a particular challenge, if you've been something happened during the pandemic and you need to reinvent yourself, but you're not sure like what threads to pull out, or you want to switch from one career category to another, but you're not sure how. Whatever you're comfortable sharing in a group, I'm comfortable listening to, and maybe we can help a bit.
I think your block on illuminate on the last slide was wonderful, because we've all been, we went through the pandemic on a worldwide basis. We all had some kind of effect. And as I've said before, talk about the mother of creativity right there is what are we going to do? How are we going to move forward? That invention, the reinvention was right at our fingertips, and it still is. So to illuminate what you can still do, or different ways that you can do something similar, is huge. And I think that was a really great point, Deborah.
Well, and I think everything that has ever come before in my work life came together in a new way to produce Authorize It. It marries all of my business expertise with the creative journey of that first book, where I learned different kinds of things, and kind of mashes it up together to create something new. So even though I did this, and now something new was born. So I think there are no mistakes. Jobs I thought were the worst decisions in my life actually ended up to teach me something that was important to me much later on. Or set me down a path that was necessary for me to go down. And it's kind of like building blocks or Legos, or or a boggle game where you're shaking out letters to form new words. That everything that's come before, the essence, and that's what I tried to get you to through the exercises. We're not talking about necessarily something literal. We're talking about the essence of who you are and what you bring to every table that you sit at. If you worked in construction and now want to work at an architectural firm or work at a in the restaurant business, whatever it is, there is something about what you brought to that architectural job at the highest level, because that's what a defining line is. It's your 40,000-foot view. You're not
I
at
love
10,000
that
feet.
because I think that most people look at their career as a progression. And they went to here, to here, to here, to here. And when you start looking at it as Legos or building blocks, that it gave you positives, your past jobs gave you negatives, your situations gave you positive and negative, and figuring out what that line is, that commonality between everything that came before as a child all the way through to this point in time, and what is that line to keep from deviating, I think is huge. And I don't think that a lot of us, including myself, have ever thought about what we would enjoy, what we would be very good at because we've had these experiences.
Yeah, we're not in a time where things are linear.
Yes,
We're
absolutely.
just not.
Yes.
It's like it's very
Yeah.
circular right now. It's not a straight line.
My job goes wishy-washy like this. Yeah.
Yeah. And you can find. I had a man in a recent workshop who actually did more than one incident.
Mm-hmm.
And one of his incidents was a sports where he took his kids' little league team to like their little championship. It wasn't like a t-ball, but it wasn't like big kids. It was
Right.
maybe 7-year-olds. And he didn't want to do it. Something changed in their neighborhood and he had to do it. So that was like the shift thing.
Well, a lot of us fall into things that we had no intentions of ever doing before.
Something changes
like,
and now you're here. And then he was a new coach, and whatever the problems were with the team, they wanted their old coach. He was mean, all of this. And then it got worse. They lost like their first 5 games, and the parents were, like, oh, geez, he stinks.
Yes.
And then there was this great period of light where he changed and realized the skill set that he really brought to the game and how he was able to teach them to be strong and courageous and resilient. And it was that story that kind of led more to his defining line and to defining his strengths and attributes. It was that one experience that was pivotal for him, and why he felt that would add dimension to him being a team leader when he transitioned, and it would help him.
I think that's an important story for all of us, because a lot of us think about our career path as something we did in our career, something we did at work on a daily basis, and having those influences and building blocks in our personal life are just as important, if not more, than our career. And they could help define that line and where we're going and what we will accept and what we won't accept, how far we will go from that line.
Yeah. And when I say what attributes you bring to the table, I mean any table that you're at. That's why I asked the question earlier. What do people turn to you most often for? Friends, business associates. Those are your real core strengths, and they may manifest mostly on the baseball field,
Yes.
and or fishing.
Mhm.
And it's not that you have to talk about those particular stories, but thinking about those incidents, those pivotal incidents in your life in this way will help you crystallize the skills, strengths, and positives that you bring with you to any role that you're going to take in, that you're living now, or any role. And that helps you to answer, tell me about yourself.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I don't know. Did you see the light bulb go off above my head?
A little bit, a little bit. I feel
Okay,
a new quote card coming. But if if everybody wants to sit with this, it's a reframing. It's a new way of thinking. It's positive, and I've done some work at libraries and with job seekers, and especially when you're a certain age, um, there's negativity that creeps in, and a feeling of like it's not gonna happen for me. I'm never gonna get a job. And the truth is that it might be more difficult for you to think conventionally and in a linear way about that next job. You might always want to keep a side gig, something, a passion project, something on the side, or you may need to rethink, and join a consultant's rank. I think there is a certain, the more technologically advanced we become, the more ageism hits at younger and younger ages, where it used to be 50 plus. Today, it could be 40. And we are moving toward a time where, like in the next 5 years, 50% of the jobs as we know them today are going to be gone. Everyone is going to have to be more entrepreneurial.
That's so true. I mean, the article I just read, and I will shout it from the mountaintops, our kids in kindergarten, their jobs have not even been invented yet. And that's really startling that they're going through school and they're going through math and reading and writing and all that stuff. And yet, what do you want to be when you grow up? I don't know, because that job hasn't been invented yet. They're not necessarily going to be those doctors and lawyers and policemen and firemen and all the stuff that they used to be that we know when we were growing up. Sorry if you're younger. It's just that's how those graduates in 18 years are going to be.
Yeah. So we'll end on that note, that life and careers are really going to be about invention and reinvention.
Yes.
At any age, more than ever before. And hopefully these tools and storytelling techniques will allow you to think differently, because, as I said, you don't need to be a writer, but you just need to think like one. So
well, thank you so much.
I will leave you all with that thought. Thank you all for
lots of light bulbs
attending.
I see. Mine, yeah.
Yeah, and I hope that this has been meaningful in some way for each one of you.
Absolutely. I appreciate that. Thank you so much for joining us and spending your time with us today, because that's just invaluable, a different perspective, and our audience, again, different guest speaker sharing a lot of the same knowledge, but in a different way. So hopefully your light bulb went off with mine as well.
Okay, very good. Bye.
Thank you, everyone.
Okay.
Take care.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.